It's live.
Yeah, well, I had a medical appointment.
Yes, I just said yesterday. Sorry,
Yes.
That's what we're going to do. Log on to get straight back in again. Good evening, members. Welcome to this meeting of the full council on Monday, the 20th of April 2026 at 7 o'clock. Town Clerk, could I first of all ask you, are there any apologies for absences received?
Councillor Marie White.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Receive any declarations of disposable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business which transacted on the agenda. This might take a while, so can start from that side and work.
I am a member of the shed. Yes, don't laugh. So I will not vote on that matter. But I'm only a member. I'm not on the committee.
Thank you.
Item 2, the weekend. Grant application 5, Sandwich Festival. And I have a loose association with item 10, the Sandwich Music Events Association.
Thank you. Councillor Maddox?
Just basically a loose association with any of the SCEA events. So that will be the Sandwich Festival, Folk and Ale? I don't think Folk and Ale is and the weekend.
Thank you.
I'm chair of the trustees of the Jubilee Centre, which is the umbrella organisation for the shed.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any conflict of interest.
I'm a trustee for the Jubilee Centre, so that's in relation to the shed, but I also volunteer for the pantry.
Thank you. Councillor Watts?
Yeah, I'm a committee member of Sandwich Community Events. So like Councillor Mallet, I can either withdraw from the room when those grants are dealt with or not take part in the discussion as agreed.
We've got a report later on how we want to handle the business tonight. So thank you. I've got no declarations of interest.
Sandwich Heritage Harbour.
I've got a very loose connection with the weekend.
Sandwich Heritage Harbour.
And the same for me, trustee of the Heritage Harbour.
Thank you. Okay with that? Okay, moving on to agenda item 3. This is public participation, where we've put aside 20 minutes for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect to business on the agenda and other matters if time permits. Do you have any requests for that? Moving on to agenda 4, and attachment 4 refers to this. This is a strategy for charity governance and management, and we've been asked to receive a report and decide on governance and management issues contained within. I'm hoping Councillor Green might talk to this.
Gladly, is it a stand-up job tonight?
It is. Full council.
Thank you. As you know, I'm kind of the chair of the Maddox Charity Commission. We've had a number of meetings, but this is an important meeting for us tonight in the sense that we need the council to agree and give direction on a number of items to do with the management of the charity. So the first thing I've got to say is that we have made an application in November to the Charities Commission, and we are awaiting a response. Their turnaround time is 23 weeks, so we expect a response in May. Now, you will remember that this is the second application that's been made to the Charity Commission, because the Charity Commission struggled with our application because most applications for charities have a very single purpose, the rescue of donkeys or the likes, whereas ours, because our application is in respect of being a beneficiary to all of the organisations of Sandwich, and there are over 50 of those covering a wide variety of different purposes. So that makes our application complicated in their eyes. But hopefully in mid-May we will receive a response, and hopefully we will be awarded kind of the charity status that we're seeking. That then gives us the issue that we need to be able to implement and work as a charity. So that's the first thing, just to by way of kind of background. The second thing is to let you know that at the moment the investment portfolio that we have with Harris Allday is worth some £3.1 million, and the Town Council is holding a further £40,000 in cash in respect of the Maddox Commission. So, moving on to the governance arrangements, we, as you will remember, the Sandwich Town Council at its sole discretion has been appointed in the will by Georgina. So it's we, the Sandwich Town Council, that would be the trustee of the charity. And as such, we need to have in place proper procedures about our meetings and how we behave, and especially in respect of conflict of interests. We've already seen going around the table, because as members of the community here, we're also involved in many of the organisations which result in kind of conflicts, that we've got to have a very clear code of practice to handle kind of conflicts. We've got to make sure that we've got the proper investment arrangements in place, because at the end of the day, it's all about the money, and the money is very important that we give it out, so we've got to have a proper grant giving policy. So these are the overriding policies and procedures that we as a council, as a trustee, need to have in place to be able to operate effectively. And we need to draw those up, because we haven't got all of those documents, although we have prepared a grant award policy at the moment. So what is the most expedient way to go about that? The most probably not for all of us as members, but for us to have a management committee. So we're being asked to decide tonight if we want to appoint a management committee, and to give out some of the key responsibilities for that management committee, to delegate certain powers, the powers to draft all of the documents that we've been talking about, the powers to act as the employer, because we do need to employ a clerk to manage this. So that's what we need to do. So the first thing then is to get the terms of reference for that management committee, so that all of those policies and procedures, those overarching ones, code of conduct, meetings, investment, conflict of interest, and grant award, those are the overarching policies. We need to get those in place. So the proposal that's coming from the management committee, and obviously a management committee would obviously vote to keep itself going, but the proposal, first the decision then really, Mr. Mayor, is are we happy to have a management committee, and can that management committee be responsible for preparing the terms of reference for itself going forward.
Thank you. So I'll open up to any observations on that. Quite rightly, as Councillor Green says, we already do have a management committee operation. I assume that when we have a charity in place, that management committee will in effect be out with the council. Whilst it will have council members on it, it should really have that hard line between the council's business and the charity's business. But for now, we are where we are in terms of still waiting for the charity to be established. So, can I take any observations, questions on the first two recommendations? Councillor Anderson.
Yes. Do we have to start?
We do.
Yes, I'm not clear about this process because, as I understand it, supposing, and I'm not making any judgment here, but just supposing we decide to use the services of Kent Community Foundation. Just supposing that we decide to use the services of Kent Community Foundation, in what sense would the management committee duplicate the services that Kent Community Foundation also offer? I don't see why we would need a management committee run by councillors when the Kent Community Foundation might be, if we vote for it, administering the process of grant making decisions and helping us make decisions.
Thank you. It's a valid question. So, Councillor Green.
Well, I still think as a trustee of the organisation, somebody needs, we need to have an effective management arrangement to manage Kent Community Foundation. And also, we've got the other statutory reportings and stuff like that to do to the Charity Commission. So we still have to appoint solicitors, we still have to appoint auditors, we still have to do lots of other things. We still have to have the management arrangements for our own meetings. We still have to have conflict, because even if we appoint Kent Community Foundation, the ultimate decision about grant awards remains with the trustee.
Yes, but can I come back? I'm presuming that the ultimate decision would not be made about who gets awards and how much they get and so on. Would not be made by the town council, but would not be made by the management committee, but would be made by the town council as a whole.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It would be made by the town council.
So I'm still wondering quite why we need a management committee if we make a decision about the campaign.
And we've still got to organise solicitors and auditors and report to the Charities Commission.
So my observations would be that the terms of reference will fall out of the decision that we will discuss later on regards to KCF. So the elements that would sit within the terms of reference will be heavily influenced by the model that we go forward with. But I think Councillor Green is clear and right that there will be a number of elements that we still would need to manage from a trustee perspective, as opposed to all of it being dealt with elsewhere. And I think a management committee probably would be the right way of doing that. But the terms of reference will inform that. And Councillor Franklin wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. I'm totally against this Kent Foundation. They want all the money, don't they?
We've got it on the agenda item later, so we can save.
Well, I'm just saying, I think 50 years ago we formed the Tollbridge Fund, a charity. We've done that before. We've still got the Tollbridge charity. If we can manage the Tollbridge, I don't see why we can't do this charity as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Well, again, it results as whether the decision of whether it's KCF or not. But if it is KCF, then we do not need to employ somebody, I don't think. We probably don't need a lot of these policies. It actually makes a lot of the things that are raised here not necessary. I'm not disputing that you may need a cut down management committee, but a lot of the other processing that management committees do would not be necessary. But that, of course, depends entirely on that. And the way that this particular paper is structured, if we don't say it early enough, we'll get into the trap of spending a lot of time doing something which we then say, oh, we don't want to do. And that's without prejudice as to what the outcome is on that decision is.
Yeah, I think to some extent I would suggest that the decisions are principal decisions that have been asked for. The detail would follow on, and I do recognise the point you're making, Councillor Black, because actually maybe the running order could have been slightly different, but I don't think it undermines the principal decisions that we're making tonight.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable to go in the way it's been structured, and KCF will be discussed properly, but at the right point in this meeting. Councillor Green.
Well,
There are two decisions being asked for.
two decisions been asked for. I'm happy to propose both. I don't know whether you want to do them separately.
So I'm happy to second that we will appoint a management committee with the caveat that its roles and responsibilities will be informed by the model that we adopt. If you're happy to have that just as an adage, I'm happy to second.
So what are we voting for? That there are three decisions to be made.
Not yet. So the first decision is the appointment of the management committee. And Councillor Green has proposed it. I'm happy to second that. And if we're happy to take a vote on
That
that.
is subject to, the terms will alter depending on this meeting.
The next one talks about the terms of reference as well.
Thank you. And I'll vote for that, yeah.
We'll use one as well.
Okay, I think that's
There should
one
be
abstention. We've got one abstention. Thank you. So the second decision that Councillor Green is seeking is responsibility for preparing the key terms of reference, for example, membership, employer and financial responsibilities should be delegated to that management committee. Are there any further comments on that before we take a proposal? Councillor Maddox.
Just an observation, the management committee of course will be STC members.
Yeah.
Is there any, should we discuss, because we are approaching an election in a year's time, continuity, how that continuity works, whether it might well be that because of that election it is a clean slate and a change, I shouldn't say clean slate, a change such that all the management committee might not be elected onto STC, meaning a completely new management committee without that continuity of having previous members, whether there is the potential for some kind of overlap. That overlap being a number of existing members should continue for a short time. It's just an observation. I'm not, no strong feelings.
The committee, it won't be just the councillors, there will be some other members.
It could well
So
be.
it could be retiring councillors, couldn't it?
It could be. They wouldn't have voting rights.
No,
but
they
you're right.
But it,
Yes.
they could have voting rights.
They could. Yeah,
If the terms of reference are written that way.
yeah, but I'm just saying, so there will be the
Yeah.
interweaving, yeah.
I think that's the detail that will be worked through when the terms of reference is generated rather than trying to second guess or design tonight. So, the decision that's been asked for tonight is giving responsibility delegated down to the committee for those areas that are mapped out, which is the terms of reference, membership, employer and financial responsibilities.
Could somebody explain, sorry, what does it mean by employer?
Well, we've got to employ a clerk,
Oh, I
so
see.
who actually is
Yes.
going to be empowered to appoint that clerk and to draft the conditions of contract for that clerk and put that clerk to work and supervise that clerk. That's basically what it means.
So, some hesitance I can see. Well, Councillor Pemberton first.
Thank you. It's not clear to me about this, how precisely a management committee and this council would interlock. When the word preparing is used in the resolution, preparing means simply drafting for submission to the council, or does it mean deciding itself?
And that's a good point, because that's just what I was going to say, so it's a very good point. So, I think this is about preparing, but Councillor Green can correct me if I'm wrong, but then the actual approval process should still sit with the full trustee, which would be the full council. That would be my interpretation, and I think we probably need to clarify that in this.
That was my intent when I wrote that.
Does that resolve questions? So the proposal is responsibility for preparing key terms of reference, for example, membership, employer, and financial responsibilities delegated to that management committee, subject to the decision making around each of these would still rest with a full trustee. Okay, I'm happy to propose that.
Happy to second that.
Okay, that's unanimous. Yeah, thank you. And then the third one, you were right, Councillor Anderson, I haven't turned my page. There is a third one, that the committee would meet twice a year as a minimum. I think that might be straightforward.
You spoke too soon. My favourite word, normally, because there will be other cases when you may have to do it more frequently. Just give yourself the latitude. The normal thing is twice a year.
Are you happy for that amendment, Councillor Green?
Yeah, absolutely.
So trustee meeting
So
normally.
the management committee would meet normally twice a year.
Sorry, later down as management committee should meet quarterly each year. So the management would meet quarterly, and the trustee would meet.
Could you explain that, Councillor Green?
The intent was that the trustee would meet at least twice a year, and the management committee would meet 4 times a year.
So this third recommendation relates to the trustee. Yep. Just want to make sure we're spot on before we vote. Top of the second page, meeting a minimum of twice a year.
That's fine.
I think so.
Anybody going to propose it?
So I'm happy to propose that we are recommending that it meets, that the full trustee meets a minimum of twice, or normally twice a year. And that's unanimous. Councillor Pennington, are we voting on that? That's unanimous. Thank you. Would you like to move on to the management arrangements?
Yes, by all means. So basically saying here is that for each of these itemised points, the financial controls, the risk management, safeguarding, records, transparency and public benefit, data protection, equality and diversity, complaints and whistleblowers, as a charity, these are kind of the standard policies and procedures that need to be in place to operate the charity properly. And by accepting that we need to have these in place, this is work then for the clerk to prepare all of these policies and procedures and processes and to implement them on our behalf. So all of these items about these management arrangements inform the job description as to what we want the clerk to do, because it's not just about drafting out these documents. I think it's about training people and actually maintaining the documents and working them. So there's a lot of, there's a huge amount of work involved in all of this, and it's basically being put forward so that people understand what we're letting ourselves in for when we become a charity, and things that we need to do to operate the charity properly.
Standard policies to replace the word equality with equity. Could I propose that we change that?
Sorry, equality.
The proposal is to replace equality with the word equity.
The difference is that equality assumes that everyone is on the same starting point, whereas equity realises that we're not all playing from the same starting point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pennington.
And that is an industry standard.
Thank you. I wonder first of all whether we can realistically take these decisions before we know if it's going to be a charity accepted by the Charity Commission or not. And secondly, a much more detailed point, if the management committee is going to draw up its own terms of reference, I'm not going to tell it how often it should meet, it will be in the draft terms of reference. Thank you.
Any observations, Councillor Green, on that? Councillor Forster.
With regard to the clerk that you envisage management committee employing, what sort of remuneration do you have in mind? And where would the money come from to pay the proposed clerk? Presumably it would come out of the Maddox request.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why it's important that we give these directions tonight so that we can inform the job description. Because, to be quite honest, I don't know whether this is a job for a clerk, as is the want with some other local charities where the clerk is doing a day a month or a couple of days a month or the likes, or whether this is a much more involved role that's going to, because processing something like 30 grant applications and stuff like that, it all amounts up to quite a bit of time, and I'm sure our own clerk could kind of inform us as to her estimate for the amount of time. So the amount of time that is needed by the clerk will impact the remuneration that's offered.
So we've had some comments. I note yours, Councillor Pennington, but of course we have a charity application that we should know the decision on in hopefully a matter of weeks. Whatever happens, any of these elements will have to come to the full trustee to approve in any case. And I think we need to remain fluid rather than saying we will only do something when we get to another point, because if not, if we do that approach, we could be here for another 12 to 18 months to get somebody recruited, to get somebody in to do all the things that we know we need to do. So that's just a commentary. So we've got 3 decisions that we've been asked to decide on here. And if we could vote on each of these. So the first is a trustee is asked to accept that the above management arrangements need to be in place. Now the timing on that will be determined, but that is the proposer asking. I'm happy to propose that we do accept that these management arrangements need to be in place.
Can I just speak on this before I second that? That's okay. Can we just make sure that we agree that any future arrangements that need to come in as well are accepted, if that's okay? For instance, we've got down here the Data Protection Act. Well, we don't know what other legislation may come in future years, and we haven't mentioned that. If that's okay, would that be okay too?
Absolutely. We've always got to comply with any new laws introduced by the country or by the Charity Commission.
Okay, so you seconded it as well, yes?
That's it.
Would you like to vote? That's one abstention. Thank you very much. The second decision we've been asked to make is that the trustee supports the recruitment of the clerk to implement. So again, this is a principal decision. Job role, content, salary, etc. will all be decided through the process, but it's putting a stake in the ground that we accept. We move it away in time from the council staff who haven't been charging the charity for doing this. We actually recognise that this role is going to be necessary to be standalone and properly resourced. So the principle is that we're being asked to support the recruitment of the clerk to implement all the things that need to be done. Is somebody happy to propose that?
Happy.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Franklin, can we vote on that? One abstention. Thank you. And finally, we've been asked that to agree that the management committee should meet quarterly each year. Councillor Green did make a comment on that.
I'm happy to propose a minimum of quarterly.
Would you want that normally?
Normally,
Put it in.
we'll normally meet on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
Happy to accept that, Councillor Green?
Yeah.
So, Councillor Green's proposed, I seconded, and if we vote. And that's unanimous. One abstention, sorry. Okay, now we do move on to the discussion around KCF. You know, we have had some very strong opinions on this in the past. I think we're at the point now we need to make a decision, because we have brought this, I think, to the table at least 3 or 4 times, and I'm hoping tonight we can at least conclude this discussion in whatever shape or form we decide. But Councillor Green, would you like to introduce this very small section for us to discuss?
Well, just kind of peeling back on the background, when we were looking into all of this, we contacted the Charities Aid Foundation, and the Charities Aid Foundation said, why don't you speak to Locality, who are a really strong organisation helping councils in the situation that you're in. And when we spoke with and employed Locality, they suggested Kent Community Foundation. And Kent Community Foundation have come through with 2 proposals. There's a proposal where we can give them an endowment, i.e. we give them all of the money and let them get on with it. Or alternatively, we give them so much money each year and they will administer the grant award process for us. Now, that's the either or we don't employ them at all. So those are kind of the 3 options that we've got. If we give them the full endowment, we lose control of the money and we really kind of take a step back. And that is a huge decision for the council to make. If we go with the flow-through arrangement, we do that on an annual basis. We give them a certain amount of money and they administer all of the grants and come up with a recommendation to us to say, these are the applicants and this is what we recommend, or we decide to drop them altogether. Now, there's a lot of detail in the paper, but that's the 3 options that we have ahead of us. So, you know, it's over to you, Mr. Mayor.
So, from my perspective, I'll give my personal view. I personally don't support the idea of giving all the money across to a third party, regardless of how effective it may or may not be. The flow through to me is very attractive from a personal perspective, because actually the grant award scheme, everybody's been involved in this. There is a lack of consistency. It's not pure consistency. The amount of effort needed, and we're doing this as councillors, but for the trust, taking out the base activity to get everything properly lined up, independently assessed, and then presented to the trustee, for me, feels attractive. But others will have other opinions. But certainly for me, the endowment is not something that I would want to pursue, taking stock of all that we've learnt over the last year, probably. So I saw Councillor Black, then Councillor Morehouse, then Councillor Gray.
Thank you. The issue I've got is, if we do the flow through, inevitably we're going to spend as much time debating whether this organisation has got it right. Because if we're saying the final decision is going to be made by the trustee, I think it's a waste of time. We will have as much conflict and disagreement as we do with the present thing. So I really don't see any value for that. I'll be silent on the other aspect, because I think that's a completely different issue. But I'm really not convinced that they will do a lot of things that will save us a lot of time, because we will still want to debate it. They will still have people with strongly held opinions, whether they're involved in the organisation or not.
Thank you. Councillor Morehouse.
More of a question. How would the grant application differ from what we have at the moment? Are we following the same model as the Kent Charity Foundation would follow, or will there be significant differences? Because those who are going to be applying to the grants will want to know what the differences are going to be. Because if we're making an existing process more complicated,
I believe it would be a lot more systematic. It would all be done online. At the moment, things are not necessarily done online. Submissions are made. Submissions are not made in their entirety. They're not moderated. We've not got initial checks and so forth. So Kent Community Foundation have got a systematic approach to the grant award process. They would be asking very similar questions to the ones that we are. Who's the applicant? What's the project? What's the benefits? Who's, you know, all of those kind of main blocks will be asked. The questions might be slightly different, but they would take those questions and operate them. Also, I think we really need to understand the amount of time and effort that goes into the administration of the process and who's actually going to do all of that. And I think actually putting responsibility onto a single clerk puts that person in a very difficult position, because every organisation in the town is going to be lobbying that individual. So I think it's better to have a kind of a third party actually do this. And we've got the option to do it for a 2 or 3 year period. And if the circumstances within the council, within the trustee become better, there's always the option at a later date to bring it in-house, to acquire our own backbone computer system for the awards. But kind of we are well-intentioned amateurs at doing this, whereas these people are seasoned professionals.
Can I just say the one thing which Councillor Breen didn't say about the endowment idea is that is irreversible. If we go down that route, we hand everything over to them and there is no way back. And I think, to my mind, that should rule that out, because I don't think that is what we should be doing with that fund.
Yes, I'd like to make 2 points. One is that, first of all, I don't support the endowment model. I think all the arguments about handing over all our money, I don't think we should do that. I think the flow-through model, we could use it, see how it goes, and if we don't want to use it, then we simply bring it back in-house, and that seems to me to be a very sensible way of proceeding. The other points I wanted to make are about the professionalisation of the grants process, which I felt, although I do have a lot of experience, and I'll come back to that, about assessing grant applications, I did feel that we are a bunch of amateurs and we're not quite sure what we're doing. And it's not just a question of the grant application and then the form to assess the grant application. It's also a question of getting reports back on what has actually happened and assessing those and so on. And I have personal experience of interfacing with the Kent Community Foundation as an applicant. And I know exactly what they ask for on their application form. And I have to say that it is a rather better application form than the one that we have designed. For example, I mean, one of the things that we were asked in the assessment this time was, what is the applicant doing about monitoring and evaluation? In fact, there wasn't a question on the application form about monitoring and evaluation. So all that, I just think that Kent Community Foundation, they are impressively professional. I also know a bit about the assessment of grant applications, because I have been an assessor of grant applications for a charity of which I used to be a trustee. And I'm also a member of the Funding Network, which is a large charity which involves its members in grant assessments. And I have used their form for assessment. And I have to say that in both cases, those assessment forms have been rather better designed than the ones that we've come up with. And I just do feel that we've given ourselves rather a lot to chew, and we would be better off. It may cost a bit of money, and it clearly does, but I think we really would be better off if we trusted the professionals, and these are people with a lot of experience. You can tell from the way they designed their forms. They know what they're doing. They also expect a report back, and that is really quite a forensic and focused operation, and they come back to you and say, so you said you were going to do this, but you haven't mentioned it in your report back. All that sort of stuff needs to be done, and it needs to be done properly. And so I would recommend the flow through.
No, I'd just echo that, but the key thing is about the follow-up is, for me, is something that we aren't professionals at. And I think it's really important that when we're giving substantial amounts of money away as a trustee, we have to follow that through.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one element that we'll discuss later on that I want to flag up about a follow-through. So already I can see that, and getting professional expertise in that is really important, because it also helps the applicants for the future. Councillor Mallet.
Thank you. I think we're all, just in this meeting, we're sort of already redesigning the application form, assuming that we stick with one of these two processes. Application forms is, I think, a very small part of it. The thing that worries me about going down either of these options is we are doing what they regard as normal. We might have a situation where we want to say to an organisation, you are doing something year by year by year which needs to continue. We don't want to make you go through this process, which is quite an extended process, to apply every year for the same thing. Maybe a 3-year period where they have to reapply. Equally, there might be particular instances where the Maddox Fund allows us to do something pretty amazing for Sandwich, which requires us deciding on a particularly large grant or spending a large amount, which again, this says we can't do. And I think this ties us into a process which might work for the standard grant giving, yes, but it stops us being a bit more innovative, interesting, copying what others do better, because we are right at the very beginning. They've been doing it for ages. We can copy them, which we're doing, as we speak. We're sort of saying we need feedback. Yes, we do. We didn't do it before. It will happen. But basically, my view is this is too much of a straitjacket on either of these options. Yes, there is a lot of work to do, which we would all have to buckle in and help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Black next, but Councillor Green would like to respond, because my sense is that the actual second option isn't a straitjacket, because the committee itself, the trustee, still has its authority in terms of what it does with the overall funds. What we're doing is we're giving a flow through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We decide on an annual basis if we want to give them 50,000 or 100,000 or $250,000 or whatever we want to do, and they work on that annual basis. We can give notice and we can terminate the arrangement at any time, type of thing. So we still retain kind of control over the whole process. We are not working to their standard process. They will interact with us to ask what the important features are in the Maddox grant award system type of thing. What are our principles? And they would incorporate those in the application forms and in their whole process. So we're not just going into a restaurant where we're having a fixed price lunch. We're able to a la carte in terms of what goes on the application form and who can apply and all of those types of things. It's not a straitjacket that's going to run ad infinitum. We still retain control. And yes, we lock into some of the best practices, And it's a shame that some of those best practices weren't signalled up at the time when we were designing this. We've done our best to put in place an interim process. It's not a final process, it's an interim process. But these people are professionals in the whole grant award life cycle, as Councillor Ungerson is saying, just not the actual award but the follow through as well. So, and I think there is the flexibility if we want to say that we are prepared, because for some organisations they may want to make longer term commitments and they might want to know that they're going to get a similar grant for a number of years. So, you know, the flexibility to be able to offer grants which are for 3 years or for 5 years renewable after 3, or rolling grants or whatever. We can build all of that in with the Kent Community Foundation model.
So I think just summing it up, in for clarity, it's not a straitjacket. If it's the second option, the first one is a straitjacket. Second one, if there are innovative, exceptional ideas, solutions, proposals, projects identified, the trustee still has the authority to govern it in that way. It doesn't say that it's decided that 50,000 goes into the process and that's it, all it does for the year.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, sorry, Councillor Douglas next.
Thank you. Well, they're wanting a fee of 11%, and I don't know if you feel that's a bit excessive or reasonable. I think it's a bit high. The only way you offset that is, of course, not using so much of the clerk's time, because that would be, sine qua non. The other thing, looking at the appendix, is we really only have to sign up for 1 year.
Yes.
And I would suggest that if we go down this route, we merely sign up for 1 year and really see how it works. Because to sign it up for 2 or 3 years and then find we really don't like it is not the best way forward. I suggest 1 year and the adjustments to the clerk's time.
We'll move through the decision making, but Councillor Wiles. Sorry, no, it's Councillor Franklin.
Yeah, but as you know, I'm totally against this charity foundation. You're talking 11%, you're talking £40,000 a year plus out of the charity, out of the townspeople, Georgina's money, which could be spent. I'm involved with 2 other charities. We have a part-time clerk. I think at the moment there's going to be extra hours. They work from home. You're talking under £10,000 a year, which is a lot more than that. And I think one of the problems is, like Councillor Maddox said, we've got the elections next year, and I think some people, I will say that I want to get through years and years ahead, and I think some people are looking in the short term to get it sorted out before the elections next year. And I must say that I think that's a shame, really, because I think it should all be done here in Sam. We've got accountants, you know, some of our accountants are accountants, some of our accountants are lawyers. We don't need to go to accountants. We already are in-house, Mr. Mayor, and we've done the Tollbridge Fund. There's the Port and Haven, that's part-time clerk, and there's also the United Charities part-time clerk, and they're a massive charity, and the United Charities is a lot bigger than this charity, and that's a part-time clerk, and that's quarterly meetings.
Thank you. As well.
So we've been through 2 of these grant cycles now. It's placed a massive administrative burden on councillors, some more than others. It's also placed a burden on the town clerk and other officers. We've not just dealt with the grant process, but we've had complaints about the way the grants have been awarded or not, which also adds to the administrative burden. So, in my view, outsourcing this makes perfect sense. As Councillor Ungerson said, it's professionalising something that we're currently handling in a slightly amateurish manner. These people are professionals. 11%, it's like employing a lawyer or a financial consultant to do some of the administrative work which otherwise falls on you, and we're not doing it well. It makes absolute sense for me to follow this model, and we're not committed to it. After a year or 2 years we can decide to bring it back in-house if and when the clerk's in post and is able to handle this. But I think adopting a much more professional approach to this makes sense to me.
Thank you. So I think we're getting close to wrapping up conversations, but Councillor Pennington.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll try and be brief. I fully support Councillor Ungerson's points. I worked myself in evaluation for a number of years, and I was very disappointed looking at some of the applications that even ongoing activities didn't seem to have any idea of what the gains had been in previous years. Give us more numbers and more ideas about how the activities would be developed and become self-sustaining even. Secondly, I think, as Councillor Wise pointed out, there is benefit in distancing ourselves from the whole allocation process. Not only will it be done better, but I think it will be seen as more independent and fair. Thirdly, I would suggest that at least 2 years would be a better time for a contract, insofar as we could then start to see results from the actions. If it only runs for a year, there will not be much more substance than the allocation process itself. If we go longer, then there would be some feedback, there would be reports on activities which could be helpful to the new council in deciding whether to continue or not. Thank you.
So, finally, the only last point I would say is that there are some charities in the town that have been mentioned that are comparators, and that is reasonable to say that the majority of these are not giving out such a number of grant. You know, this is a grant giving model. This is not sustaining, for example, an estate of property. So it is quite demanding, as I would personally say, and I hope others agree, to run 2 grant schemes. It involves a lot of time, and we are not perfect. I am certainly not perfect in terms of my assessment skills. Far better, and we wouldn't be moving away from responsibility. We still would be making the ultimate decision in terms of the grant awards. What we would be doing is having that layer below it in terms of professionalism, in terms of making sure the right information is presented, assessed at first stage, and then presented to the trustee to decide. So that's my final comment, but I think we should work through, unless Councillor Green has any other observations, we should work through each of these as they're listed, which is the first one.
Yeah, let's get through it.
So the first recommendation was whether we want to adopt an endowment model. I would need somebody to propose that, and if we don't get it proposed, then we won't take it to a vote.
I propose that we do not adopt the endowment.
Right, so yeah. If somebody proposes it, then we'll take it to a vote, but if nobody proposes it, then we won't vote on it. So we would need a proposer and a seconder. Yeah, we're not going to vote on the endowment. You definitely don't want to vote on the endowment.
That came as negotiation at all.
Okay,
No,
so
it's totally against it. Tollbridge Fund's been given money for 50 years.
yeah, okay, that's fair. Okay, advice from the town clerk, reasonable advice. Let's have a clear negative that we don't want to go with an
So I
endowment.
propose
Councillor
we do
Parsons
not
that.
vote.
Councillor Wiles has seconded it, and if we could vote on the endowment option.
So the vote is that we're not accepting.
Accepting
An
the
endowment. Come on, Franklin, you must.
No, I don't.
Councillor Franklin, you are against it, I know.
Yeah. No, I don't think
That's
that's
unanimous.
Yeah, I think that's good to have that.
Yeah,
Tollbridge Fund's been given money.
Right, moving on to the second option. I just had one clarification. So if the fee is 11%, is that even if we run 2 schemes a year of awards?
Well, they lay out a model for the fees, and the level of the fee depends on the amount of grant award.
On the grant.
I reckon it's probably quite negotiable.
It probably is, but at the end of the day, they've given it a kind of 11% if it was £100,000.
Okay, so is anyone happy to propose that we adopt a flow-through process using KCF?
I propose that we do adopt the flow-through process.
Councillor Morehouse seconded, did you? Yeah, go to a vote on that. 2, 3 against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, sorry, can I just, so proposed, this is quite important.
Yep.
Was Councillor Carter,
Yeah.
seconded,
Councillor Morehouse. 3 against, 1 abstention, I think I saw, yes I did, and the rest were in favour.
Can I just clarify, there's been talk about a minimum of 2 years or 1 year or
Yes,
whatever? Can we just,
We would need to take that to a second. So the first proposal that I heard would be that we would run it for a year. Is anybody happy to second?
Do you think that perhaps a negotiation should take place before it's brought back to council? Because it wouldn't need to be a
No, I think we should at least go with the proposal of what we're looking to adopt. So
I'll propose 1 year.
does anybody have to?
Second one.
So there's enough there to vote, so we could vote on this as 1
How
year.
can you indicate that you'd rather have 2 years?
Well,
I'm voting against the
Because-
proposal.
Councillor Black was the first one to propose the duration, which was 12 months, and he's got a seconder from Council Carter. So we should vote on this first, and if that fails, then we can propose on the second 2 years.
12 months.
Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 against, 2 abstentions. So that is not carried.
9 against.
So you propose that we run it for 2 years?
Yes, I think somebody else might have done that already, I can't remember.
Yes, I'll second that.
Yes, it was Councillor Pennington that proposed 2 years, and Councillor Anderson has seconded that. We could vote on that.
Right, 3, 4, 3 against, 1 abstention.
That's carried. So at least we can finally put to bed the endowment.
Yeah. It's democracy, Paul. It's democracy as you talk.
Thank you. We move on to the next item, which is direction of charity separation from STC. Councillor Green.
yeah, I think if we could really try and rattle through quickly, I think there has been, previously there's been talk that this charity should be independent and separate from the town council, but when you actually come to think about it, then you start asking questions. Is this clerk going to be employed on a local government type of contract or a completely separate contract? Because if they end up working in the same buildings, you've got people working maybe on the same systems and so forth, employed, you know, on different terms and basis and so forth, so it becomes an issue. So that's the first one, and I think it's, do you want to do these one at a time or do them all at the end or take them by exception? The second thing is, what about office space for the clerk? We've heard Councillor Franklin say
Working from home.
that they would work from home. Yeah. So that's for the clerk. What about any other employees or consultants that are involved or service providers? You know, so, and then there's meeting space for the trustee. As a trustee, do we want to meet in the council chambers here, or do we want to go to the Bell Hotel and have a cup of tea in the meeting, which would be nice?
Jubilee Centre would be
Then there's the financial systems. Do we want to lock on to the computer system and so forth here that the RFO is using? What about the website and Facebook and all of that? Are we going to be locked on with the town? What about the use of, somebody said, well, we've got a toll bridge fund in operation, why don't we use the toll bridges policies and procedures? And then other people have said, we don't want to create a mammoth like the toll bridge. And we've got other things like insurance. Should we add it onto the existing insurance policy, or should we have our own separate policy? What about the banks? You know, should we use a separate bank? Should we use separate auditors and so forth? So these are the questions that we need to give direction to, because unless we know the answers to them, we're not sure what we're doing.
So I think they're all valid points, but what I would like out of this is clarity with the principle that we've set already, which is that we do want it to be separate from the town council. Councillor Wells.
So throughout this, we've said the charity should be completely separate. I think we as a council should not hobble the trustee future trustee by saying how they should run their business. So in my view, all of these should be in the independent column. The trustee should decide all of these things. If they decide at some future date they want to use offices in this building, or our financial systems or our insurance, then that's for them to decide. But at this initial stage, I think it has to be all down to the trustee to decide.
Well, we are the trustee.
Not yet.
Not yet. Councillor Black.
I think we should have maximum independence, but using the office space here, or just the meeting space here, that seems to be fairly sensible rather than have to spend time and money getting other things. That does not imply any particular relationship with the town. We have the tourism forum here, we have other meetings here. It seems a little bit excessive not to use a facility in the town. That's the only one I would think that you can be very flexible. On the rest, I think we should have maximum separation.
I think it should be a completely different charity, and I heard our councillor Fortescue, we do have our meetings here, but we just rent this room for about 2 hours, at maximum 3 hours, don't we, quarterly, and then these clerk works from home.
Yeah.
So they've got their own system, their own finances,
Yeah.
and then we have independent auditors, and it's quite straightforward. So, and I say that with the Tollbridge Fund, I mean, I've been on the Tollbridge Fund for ages, and town council, but I mean, they've worked for 50 years giving out grants, and I don't think it's ever caused a problem. Anyone's gone up to someone, oh, you never give us any grant. It's all part of our community, isn't it? It's a community charity.
Thank you. So I think I'm hearing that the proposal is that all elements are kept independent, and that the charity, if it wants to use space here, will approach the council and will negotiate either whether it needs, and the council will present its own response, whether that's chargeable or not. Yes? So I think if somebody had to propose that all these elements are treated as
I'm happy
independent.
to propose all elements are kept independent 100% from the town council.
So we have a second, Councillor Wiles and seconded, so we could vote on that. Well, that's unanimous. Right, memorial suggestions. So I'm hoping we don't.
Yes, again, hopefully we can rattle through these quickly. These suggestions have come to the management committee at various times over the last 12 months, and the management committee isn't empowered to decide whether to progress them or formally drop them. The no-name street is a possible site for a memorial area, subject to agreement with Sandwich Town Council and Dover District Council. Is that something that we want to progress? We want to vote on each one as we
I
go.
think we need to. Yes.
I have heard that land is now going to be used by the Turkish restaurant.
Yes, so I can update on that. It's an interim arrangement that will be on a rolling 3-month basis, I believe. It's in the, it slightly overtakes where we were, and that's okay, but the actual intention still is with DDC to discuss with us about the transfer of that land to STC ownership. The person, the restaurant, are not going to be given a long-term lease for its use. So it's still a valid proposal.
Mr. Mayor, could we defer this? I mean, I'm thinking of the time when we're going through all the other grants tonight, aren't we?
Yeah.
Could we defer this to another meeting, or to the management meeting? Because there might be other ideas for memorials.
Yeah, so we've brought it up to here because the committee isn't able to decide.
No.
When do we next meet as a full trustee?
As a full trustee, what, this is an EGM for STC. At the moment, we don't really have. We've got,
right, okay, so we can
we've
bring
got
it to an
management.
STC meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy if you want to propose that, unless anybody thinks we actually need to rattle through and agree.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we've been kicking this can down the road for
There are
so
some
long.
elements.
I think Councillor Wiles quoted in the last meeting, it's been 4 years and nothing's been done. I think, you know, we should be able to make quite a simple decision. My decision on this, my proposal, because myself and Councillor Mrs. Carter knew Georgina exceptionally well and helped her when she was in her illness. And I think if Margaret was here tonight, she would say the same, that we should be looking towards the music awards and scholarships. And the reason I say that is because Georgina was not the sort of person that would want a statue or a bust or a picture or anything like that. When I held the Christmas lights gala and we had a big event in the room next door, in the jewellery room, I would ask her to stand up and say a few words, and she would always refuse. And she was one of the biggest benefactors to the Christmas lights when I was running it. And I always said, oh, this is all in recognition of Georgina Maddox, and she would be hiding in the corner somewhere like that. So don't put a statue up that the pigeons are going to sit on and what have you. Let's do what Georgina would have liked, and Margaret would back that up, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so I think we may need to pick out one or two of these to progress quicker. The others we may need to bring back at a later to discuss. But Councillor Wiles, I think I might know what you're going to do.
Yes, you can guess. I mean, the piano is of particular interest to me. Both the property manager and the assistant town clerk are in favour of moving it into the gallery. The property manager has had a quote for it to be restored, retuned, the hammers replaced for about 2,500, and this is a kind of oven-ready proposal, if you like, because, I mean, as Councillor Carter said, it's over 4 years now. We haven't really done anything to honour her memory. The piano is the only artefact that we have that's left that represents her. It's a music item. And moving it into the gallery and renaming the gallery the Georgina Maddox Gallery would be a great gesture in terms of honouring her amazing legacy, her bequest to us. Putting it in this building, which is the main beneficiary of her bequest. So I think I would like to propose that that's supported by the full council.
Yes.
Not going to vote yet.
We haven't budgeted any of this, so I don't know what sorts of amounts of money we're talking about. So I would very strongly support music scholarships, but I do think that we need to talk to the schools about, and that involves the infants, the juniors, and the secondary schools in Sandwich, about how they would envisage a music scholarship and what it would be for, whether they should have more than one, and how much money would be needed to endow music
Come
scholarships.
back on Emily if it comes to that.
I think scholarships is a good idea, but why just confine it to music? You've already said maths, and I understand she was interested in science and maths as well. I really think you need both, because otherwise we're just focusing on one narrow thing, and the demands of our society far more now on maths and science. So I think whether you did some alternating year on year, but I do think you should include something like maths as well as music, if you go down that route.
Like Councillor Carter, I worked with Georgina for several years on the Sandwich Festival, and she was very interested also in art and photography. So there were two other subjects.
Okay, so this request tonight was about whether we progress any of these options. And I think from what I hear is that we have a small number of options that we should say yes to progress, but quite rightly, they have to be costed, they have to be modelled, and they have to be agreed. So for example, the piano itself, we need a figure of 2,500. That is it needs to be very clearly stated what the cost is and agreed. It could be, yeah, yes.
every 3 months.
It could be. So all of that needs to be worked through. The scholarship is something that I had mentioned many months ago, and I support that, but again, that needs to be costed and understood, the scope and the ability to apply and etc. All the things that go with it. So, but again, all we've been asked to do is whether we support any of these should progress. So we can pick those out and agree to pick those and take those forward, and it might only be just the scholarships and the piano for this evening. Unless anybody's going to jump up and down.
I'm going to propose just confined to scholarships plural, not just music. And
That will
secondly,
be the scope of the scholarship once we get
yes, that's right. And the piano.
And I assume progressing Councillor Green, these would then be taken back to the committee to work through in terms of the detail. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
With the decision being made back here, or actually delegating the decision to deliver those?
Well, I would have thought they need to come back because, you know, we can talk about music scholarships. It's when you the scope, the Mayor mentioned the scope. You know, are we giving out instruments? Are we providing lessons? You know, are we hiring halls? Are we hiring tutors or whatever? There's just so much scope around each of these. It's until you've actually got firm proposals from the schools as to how they would go about it. You can't kind of cost it up, and it would all, at the end of the day, go against the Maddox Fund.
So I'd like to propose that we pick out the piano, the scholarships, delegate down to the committee that it takes responsibility developing the scope of those and what the costs are attached to it, and then they come back to an STC when ready to do so for a decision.
Yeah, the logo. The logo, I think we should get a logo.
Which number is that?
That was me and Canva.
It's very nice. I like
It wasn't. It was the internet.
Is somebody happy to second that as well, the logo? So that would be those 3 elements will be taken to the management committee to then get agreed here. Somebody happy to second that? Councillor, would you like to vote on those? Right. What I would suggest is the remaining items should not be rushed through for the next STC. I think we should take some breathing space and get back in maybe a couple of STCs time, not least because the STC papers are going out.
Oh, he's written. The property manager's written a full-on report
For
on the piano.
oh, that's okay. That's okay. Sorry,
It's
no,
ready to go.
it's all the other elements
No, no,
that we
no.
haven't voted on tonight. I don't want to send
The
it.
piano report is
Yeah.
ready to go.
Okay. Councillor Breen, does that cover all of those recommendations?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is attachment 5, councillor participation in awards decisions. Councillor Breen, is Councillor Green's report, so if you need
Sorry, I would like at this stage to make a point of order, please, which arose out of the last management committee meeting, when there was a breach of confidentiality by one of the councillors, and I think it should be drawn to the attention of this council. This arose at the last meeting of the management committee on the 30th of March, which was a public meeting, and members of the public were present. All those councillors attending the meeting were reminded by the chair, Councillor Breen, that the names of those councillors assigned to assess individual grant applications were to remain confidential. The reason being to maintain the integrity of the assessment process. All councillors present were then asked to affirm their agreement to this, which they all did. Later in the meeting, discussion was held in public as to how to deal with applicants for a grant who had not submitted all requested information. At that stage, Councillor Suka publicly stated that he had been looking at the papers for the applications assigned to him, including the Sandwich Heritage Harbour Trust, which had submitted no documentation. Now, whether that was correct or not correct is not the point. in fact he is wrong and that the Harbour Trust had provided all necessary documentation. Later in the discussion, Councillor Suker repeated his assertion, again naming the Heritage Harbour Trust for a second time. Now this, to my mind, could well have prejudiced the Heritage Harbour Trust application, because we were almost being told that we were incompetent for not producing our documentation. But as I said, that is not the point. The point is that our Standing Order 721E states quite clearly, councillors, staff, councillors, contractors and agents shall not disclose confidential information without legal justification. The Heritage Harbour Trusts believe that they've been prejudiced by this breach of confidentiality, that they were the only applicant who was mentioned as having not produced any documents. We believe that Councillor Suker at that stage should have made an apology and should have recused himself from the assessment of the Sandwich Heritage Trust grant application. We believe this council should now ask him to do this and for our application to be reviewed by 3 different councillors.
So I'd like to respond to that, because I was aware of this and I have gone back to the video, and I'd like to challenge it strongly, because I think I didn't betray any confidences around this. The conversation actually in the meeting, first of all, focused on the football club and the absence of documentation. In terms of my input to that meeting, I said, and I've taken a screenshot from the recording, so it doesn't matter how you might present it, the words are there. I said that I've looked at an application form from Heritage Trust. I didn't say I've assessed it, I haven't assessed it. That's an assumption you've jumped to. I also then said there are voices that will hear this in the room. I didn't name any councillors. I didn't say that I was assessing it. What I also said, and this is a key point, I can only see an application form. I did not say that the forms supporting it had been submitted. So I'd like you to withdraw that. I've listened to it, I've got it in front of me, I know what I said.
I have also listened to a transcript of it, and you talk about you've looked at the pot of applications you've been asked to assess. I can't recall whether you actually said we had not submitted documentation. I agree, you said you did not have the documents in front of you. But as I said, the point is not whether there were documents or not. The point is that you, having affirmed in the meeting earlier that you would keep the names of the applications confidential, you mentioned the Sandwich Heritage Trust twice in that meeting, and that is my objection.
We've had the names referred to tonight by a number of councillors. I'm a bit worried that that undermines the whole process, Councillor Gray.
Sorry, what was that?
We've had a number of references by councillors tonight regards the applications that have been submitted.
Yeah.
So if we need to stop the whole process, then maybe that's what we need to do, because we've had a number of the applications mentioned in this meeting.
Well, that's up to the council.
And in fact, are they in the papers? I don't know if they're only in the confidential item, but they've been mentioned in communications.
We were asked to declare any conflict of interest.
Exactly.
And you can't do that without,
Yes.
or most of us can't do that without mentioning the organisation.
Yeah.
So,
You can.
well, I don't see.
You just gave your interest.
Yeah, yes, no, I didn't, I
gave
mentioned
my
what it
interest.
was.
I didn't say whether I'd assessed anything.
No, I agree, I just merely said I've got it.
There was no need for Councillor Suker to have mentioned the name of the Heritage Harbour Trust. You could have just said, you've looked at the applications which you've been asked to assess, and one or more or some of them didn't have any documentation.
At that
In
point,
fact, the documentation was lodged, and now we know that it was with the council at the time of that meeting. In fact, it was lodged on the 21st.
and that's fine, you can have that parallel view, Councillor Gray, because actually I did not say that the documents had been not placed by the Harbour Heritage Trust. I didn't say that, I said that I hadn't got them in front of me. But I also hadn't assessed any applications at that point, and equally I hadn't assessed that individual one. But if you, I accept your challenge, and if you want to vote that I withdraw from that, but I would argue strongly that 2 people have already assessed it separately, and they should remain. It's not about putting 3 new people on it, because none of those have mentioned the Harbour Trust.
Well, I've said what I think, and I think
I just wanted to say as well, at that same meeting, unfortunately after the comments that you made, Mr. Mayor, 2 people, and I'm not mentioning any names, in that meeting then said that we should consider throwing out the applications that haven't got any backup paperwork thereafter. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying anything else, but unfortunately nobody made any checks with the town clerk before those comments were made in a public sphere, and that should not have gone ahead. So that the issue I've got is people in this council chamber making comments without backing it up factually. And you know that I've always been like that. So I'm not cautioning any blame factor, but after Councillor Chuka's comments, 2 councillors said we should throw out the applications that haven't got any supporting paperwork, and that should not have come about, that should not have been said.
So yes, sir, I'll bring Councillor Wiles in a second, but Councillor Carter, I just want to go back to what you've just said. There is not an association with what I said to what anybody else said in that meeting. Secondly, the meeting did not resolve to throw anything into the bin. I made a simple comment, a clear comment, that I hadn't got the supporting papers in front of me. I made no assertions that it hadn't been submitted. I made no assertions that the town clerk had them. All I said was I did not have the papers to support the application, and that was a fact. You've asked for facts, that was a fact. I did not have those. I had made no assessment at that point. But I don't want to labour this, because actually I'm happy for that particular one to be taken away, because actually I have not made the decision that you think has been made this evening in regards to the award of the grants. I was a supporting councillor within the group decision that would be discussed tonight if it happens. Councillor Wiles.
I think I was the councillor who said that in future, if forms are not filled in correctly or the information is not supplied, we shouldn't even be considering it. I didn't name names of any organisations. I think that's a perfectly legitimate thing to say. I'm not sure what this intervention, what the purpose of this intervention is, whether it's constructive or has some ulterior motive. I really don't know, but I think it's just wasting our time. I think we should move on.
I'm happy for you to do that. I made my point. I think that there was a breach of our standing orders by Councillor Suka. It was made quite clear at that meeting that we would keep the names of the assessors confidential. I've said, but I'm happy to leave it as it is and move on.
If it is a point of order though, it should be recorded in the minutes, officially recorded.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. The chair is here at that meeting, and I know you have corresponded with that person as well. My personal view is the decision on whether an award is made or not tonight will be made by the collective. All that will happen is the assessors, led by one of those within the group, will present their findings, and then there will be discussion and a vote.
Can I just say I've apologised to Councillor Gray for the way I chaired that meeting. We're obviously, as I said earlier, we're good intentioned individuals trying to implement Georgina's thing.
Exactly.
And you know, I feel aggrieved that, you know, people are so critical of things when it's all good intentioned.
Yeah.
And I'm really disappointed with some of the comments and the point of order that's been raised tonight. It's unnecessary, it's not moving us forward, it's divisive, and it's not welcome.
And I think all this shows that the decision we made earlier to offshore this process is absolutely the right decision.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree.
Absolutely right.
Thank you, and thanks for making that point of order, Councillor Gray. I think we should move on.
I'm proposing to move on, but I've got a point. I may have missed something, but if we look at the bottom of the thing we discussed a few minutes ago before the point of order, have we voted on the 3 final recommendations?
Well, I did check with Councillor Green whether he was happy with what we'd covered.
Oh, that's not the same.
I know, yeah, we
If people are happy that that's the case, then fine. I don't want to be pedantic about it, but I don't want us tripping over procedural items as clearly as
yeah,
there
I
is.
picked the first one off. Sorry, the second one. We have a Council agreed to recruitment of an experienced clerk.
Yes.
Well, we have already agreed that we would go through recruitment. I'm happy to vote on that again if you're proposing we should do that.
Well, it's really the other 2 bits: assign responsibility and give direction to the third party.
Yeah.
The first one I'm less concerned about. I think we have agreed.
Okay, Councillor Green, do you want to just read through those 3 recommendations with any suggestions in terms of how we might want to adopt them?
Well, we haven't got to that, as far as I'm concerned. We're still on the councillor participation in award decisions, aren't we? Aren't we jumping around here? I'm lost.
No. So, at the end of that last report, which was the memorial suggestions, the final items which Councillor Black is quite rightly pointing out, there are 3 recommendations. The first is the Council agrees that recruitment of an experienced clerk is an urgent matter to be made a priority. We've already voted on that.
Yeah.
The second one is that we assign responsibility for the recruitment. We haven't voted on that. Is there a proposal around that, Councillor Green?
No.
And I propose that we delegate that to the Management Committee to take that forward.
I'll second that.
Okay, we vote on that. And thirdly, give direction was whether a third party should be engaged as an interim measure to progress the policy and procedure needed for the governance and management arrangements.
I would propose that again that's delegated to the Management Committee to
Decide.
decide on their resources.
Yeah. I'm happy to second that. Agreed.
Thank you. Sorry to be pedantic.
No, it's important. Thank you. Got that? Okay, moving on. So back to, I think Councillor Green is going to introduce attachment 5, Councillor participation in awards decisions.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
So you've got the report in front of you. We need to decide if councillors who are trustees or committee members of the organisation and have a clear conflict of interest and should not be allowed to participate in discussions or voting, whether those councillors should be present during discussions and voting is to be agreed.
I think it would be quite a good idea for councillors in that position to be in the room, because there may be questions of clarification which only they can clarify. So that's what I would support, that they don't vote, they can't argue in favour of the application, but if there's a point of clarification, then they can be asked.
Councillor Morehouse?
Second that.
Sorry, we're taking comments first, but we'll finish that.
3 schools are covered in here. What's the situation regarding governance of schools? Because we've got trustee or committee, but it doesn't mention school governance. And there's at least 3 mentions here of 3 applications about schools.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make a pertinent observation. Councillor Marie said last time when he undertook this process that he remained in the council chamber and discussed the previous application. So we've really set up a precedent already that that is what took place for the first round of applications. So if we move away from that now, we've already granted some grants that have been discussed on by councillors that had some interest into them. So he admitted he did not vote, so that's very important. He did not vote, but he said he remained in the room to discuss them. And I believe that should be the path that we should go down, and I propose that.
So, sorry, let's not just jump into proposals. We'll have the opportunity to speak first before we start voting. So I have a view. My view is that actually we don't have participation from those who are directly involved, either as a trustee, etc. Because actually we have something like a dozen applications here. Half of those are not represented in the room. My personal view, no precedent has been set. We're dealing with a second scheme. We should look at it through learning. We're learning as we go. And I would find it difficult, personally, I'm happy to lose a vote, where individuals who have not been able to present more detail because they're not part of this group, whereas others who have been able to present more detail because they are part of this group, gives a bias. The other aspect I have is, you've already heard a challenge about my behaviours earlier. I find that very uncomfortable because I think it was very, very unreasonable for that tonight, but it's an entitlement of any councillor to do so. I think there's peer pressure in this room, and peer pressure is subtle and it can be influential for some people, and I would like us to be seen as clean as we can as a group of individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should go back to the traditional way. If you declared an interest, you left the room. You don't put pressure on any of the other councillors. You discuss fairly. A proposal's gone in from your organisation, whatever, and then the other councillors decide. And there's no comeback then, because if you're sitting in the room, because I did have this personally, a planning application, new estate was built near me, and some of the people who bought houses, they complained because I was, because the planning was discussed by full council then, and they actually went through loads and loads of agendas, and I saw that I'd left the room. So I think it does cover you to leave the room, and so there's completely no comeback from people that don't agree with what's happened to their grant.
I think the point that Councillor Black's trying to make is that governors, school governors, should be treated in the same way as those who've got an interest in the organisation. I think that's what Councillor Black is implying.
Any other comments? Yes.
One comment here is that if we have an interest, we should be treated as a member of the public. Member of the publics are not allowed in any way, so we shouldn't be.
Good point. Thank you. Any others?
There could be a compromise. People who have an interest could remain in the chamber for an initial discussion so that they can answer questions, provide more information, and then when it comes to the vote, they could leave the chamber so they wouldn't know which councillors have voted for or which councillors have voted against.
Yeah, I think it's more about my point was more about the influence and the bias as well, in the sense that if, and I've maybe it is a good measure in the past, where when an item came up somebody had a direct interest in, they did excuse themselves before the discussion happened. The issue that we've got is, we have got a dozen or so applications, of which only 6 are represented by individuals here. If we feel that that's acceptable, then that's how we go, but we have not invited to all applicants the opportunity to come here to answer questions. It's another learning point.
Yes, I mean, some of us have declared umbrella interests.
Yep.
Others have declared direct interests, and some have claimed loose interests. So so where are we with those?
So I think Councillor Green's attempt was to try and, so what we need to do, there's no point us sort of saying, oh, it's all too difficult. We need to come to a clear decision, not to suggest that actually it's vague. We need to be clear. So we have layers. We have trustees in this room. If we accept that trustees should not be part of discussion and should excuse themselves, then that's what we say. If we say somebody is a governor of a school for a school that's applied for the money, if we say that that person similarly should declare and excuse themselves, that's what happens. But then you get to the lower levels of vagueness about links. So for example, Councillor Black being a member of the
We're not allowed to
shed,
say.
my personal view is I wouldn't see that as directly influencing the outcome. But he has already said he's not going to vote on that, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
I think that's the ethical bit. It's still not.
The attempt from Councillor Green was to try and give some clarity about how we're going to take the phase in confidence in terms of voting and participation. But it's not for me to direct it. This is Councillor Green's report, and I'd like us as a group to come to a decision, rather than suggesting this is all too difficult. We need to resolve it tonight. And it could be that we allow everybody in the room to talk and vote, but it's wherever we draw the line, we are accountable for that decision as a group.
Well, may I make the formal proposal then? If you are a member and are not part of any management, governance or trusteeship, and you're just a member, that you are able to answer questions, but you should not be voting. If you are a member of things like governance boards, committees, trustee groups and so on, you should leave the room, would be my formal proposal.
Support that. Councillor Wise has supported that, so just for clarity, can you just say that clearly again?
Yes, if you are formally a trustee, a membership of a managing board, a governor of a school, or any other like thing where you are in a position of making decisions about the place, that person should leave the room. If you are, I want to say merely, if you are a member, then you shouldn't vote, but you should be available if asked, or someone clearly has got the completely wrong end of the stick, to make a point of information, but you should not be voting, as I proposed with one organisation that I'm a member of, and I will not vote on that. But
okay, so we've got somebody seconding that, Councillor Wiles, so can we take that to a vote with that clarity?
One abstention.
One abstention and one.
Just one abstention.
Two abstentions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I know it's difficult, but it's important. We are learning as we go along.
Yeah.
And I do find it difficult that if we've got half a dozen applicants who are not in this room, they could quite easily complain that they were disadvantaged to not have the opportunity to participate. Thank you very much. Okay, before we move into confidential matters or not, can I just say the next meeting date, so we've got date of the next quarterly council meeting on, actually the next meeting is next Monday on the 27th of April, but it's not a quarterly council meeting, it's an ordinary full council meeting. Yeah. Then we also have the Maddox Management Committee meeting on Monday the 1st of June 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Okay, so what we're now being asked is to resolve under the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1916 in accordance with Standing Order 7.3.2 to exclude the press and public on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. And we have two items here. This is 4.26.7. The Council has a duty on the law to individuals whose personal data or other confidential information is required to be most likely to be discussed. And the second, 4.26.8, the Council has duty under law to individuals whose personal data or other confidential information is required to be always likely to be discussed. Unless somebody's wanting to challenge either of those, does somebody have to propose those? Councillor Pennington and Councillor Carter has seconded. If we vote, and that's unanimous. So I'd like us to take a 5-minute break now at this point, if we could, and then we'll come